All right, so imagine this. You're like a super powerful ruler, right? Building a massive empire. But there's a catch.
Okay.
You can't use money to pay for, well, anything, really. Armies, buildings, you name it. How would you make your dreams a reality?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the puzzle we're tackling today today. Welcome to Legacy of Giants, the podcast series where we unearth the surprising, often surprising beginnings of the systems and structures that make our world tick. And today we're diving deep into, well, something you probably deal with every day, but maybe not always your favorite thing. We're talking taxes.
Taxes, yeah. Often seen as a modern day burden. But their roots, they go way back, intertwined with the entire story of civilization.
Okay, so let's hit rewind, right?
Yeah.
Way back to ancient Egypt. We're talking around 3000 BC.
Right.
Pyramids,
Yeah.
pharaohs.
Right.
And get this, a tax system already in place.
Wow.
So what did taxes even look like in a world without coins or
Yeah.
dollar bills for that matter?
It was a world of in-kind payments. So instead of cash, people would contribute a portion of their crops, livestock, or even their labor.
So basically, if you couldn't pay with grain, you paid with sweat.
Exactly.
Was that common in other sort of early societies?
Absolutely. The concept of contributing a portion of your earnings or your gains for collective benefit, it was pretty widespread. Take the tithe, for example, a payment of 1/10 mentioned in, various historical texts, including the Bible.
Yeah.
And while it wasn't always enforced by a state, the tithe does reflect, an early understanding of shared responsibility.
Interesting. So these early systems, they were often tied to what people produced or the work they could do.
Yeah.
When do things start to get a bit more, organized?
Well, let's fast forward a few centuries to the Persian Empire under Darius I the Great,
Okay.
around 500 BC. He put in place a surprisingly sophisticated tax system.
Darius the Taxman. Tell me more. What made his system, stand out?
Well, Darius, he divided his empire, a vast empire, into provinces called satrapies.
Okay.
And each satrapy was taxed based on its specific economic output.
Hold on. So they actually took into account the unique kind of strengths of each region. That's pretty advanced for the time.
It is, and you can see echoes of this in, even modern economic policies. Targeted economic incentives. It suggests an early understanding that a one-size-fits-all approach to taxation, it doesn't work in a diverse empire.
This is making me realize that ancient history was a lot more complex than just, conquering and just taking stuff.
Right. The Persian system, it seems to reflect a conscious effort to ensure sustainability. They weren't just grabbing resources, they were thinking about long-term stability.
Fascinating. Okay, so we have ancient Egypt with its labor and goods-based system. Persia with its surprisingly, sophisticated regional model.
Yeah.
What about the Romans? I mean, they were famous for their organization and, their love of taxes too.
The Roman Republic, they initially focused on taxing individuals based on their property value. So imagine paying 1% to 3% of your property's worth each year.
Oof. That's going to make a dent in the toga budget. Did everyone just line up to pay?
Not quite. The Romans, being practical, they auctioned off the right to collect taxes.
Really?
To private individuals called publicani.
Publicani. So ancient tax collectors, but with a profit motive.
You could say that. The publicani, they would pay the government the expected tax revenue up front, and then they'd collect the taxes themselves, pocketing any surplus.
Wow. I wonder how many chariot dealerships thrived thanks to those publicani. But seriously, this system sounds like, a recipe for some abuse.
It definitely had its challenges, but it also shows, the lengths the Romans were willing to go to in order to fund their vast empire. Later, Emperor Augustus, he introduced a more direct tax system, shifting the focus to individual income and requiring regular censuses to assess wealth. This move towards income tax as opposed to solely property-based taxes was a pivotal moment in the history of taxation.
So the Romans were grappling with ways to tax both wealth and income. Interesting how some of those ideas are still with us today.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how do historical tax rates compare to what we see today? Were ancient Egyptians paying like a higher percentage than, the average taxpayer now.
Unfortunately, direct comparisons are tricky.
Okay.
Historical records often lack the kind of economic data we have today, so it's hard to assess the real burden those rates placed on people. We can see what the rates were, but understanding their true impact, that requires more context.
No comparing ancient tax burdens to, like, modern income tax brackets then.
Not with any accuracy, no. However, what we can observe is a general trend of rising tax rates from the 18th century onward, particularly in Europe.
Wars and governments,
Yeah.
two things that always seem to need more funding.
Indeed. As nations engaged in larger and more costly conflicts, and as centralized governments took on more responsibilities, the need for revenue increased. And taxes, well, they became the primary tool to meet those needs.
So from ancient grain payments to funding modern, like, welfare states, taxes come a long way.
They have.
But the core idea remains the same, right? It's about collecting resources for the benefit of society as a whole.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this topic so fascinating. Taxes, they aren't just a financial mechanism. They reflect the relationship between individuals and the societies they're a part of.
Yeah.
It's a story of power economics. And that constant negotiation between, individual responsibility and collective needs.
Okay, so we've journeyed from ancient Egypt to the rise of modern states. Next up, we'll delve into the different types of taxes we see today, from income tax to property tax, sales tax, and all those other fun ways we contribute to the common good. Stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into the world of taxes.
Welcome back to our deep dive into taxes. I feel like we've time traveled,
We have.
explored, the origins of taxation, from ancient Egypt to the Roman Empire.
And now we arrive in the modern era,
Right.
where the tapestry of taxes has become incredibly intricate.
Intricate is a good word. I think most people understand the basics, like income tax.
Yeah,
But then it gets kind of fuzzy.
yeah.
So let's clear things up a bit. What are some of the, the key players in this modern tax game?
Well, you've got the one we all know and maybe love, income tax.
Right.
It's levied on both individuals and businesses based on, their earnings.
Uh-huh.
Then there are Social Security contributions.
Which fund those essential safety nets, like retirement and healthcare.
Right. Those are pretty much universal,
Mm-hmm.
at least in developed countries.
Then you have property taxes, which are calculated based on the value of real estate. And of course, there's sales tax, which is added to the price of goods and services.
Okay, those are the familiar ones. But I know there's like a whole other layer of taxes out there
Absolutely.
that most people probably don't think about too much.
For example, there's VAT,
VAT.
value added tax.
Oh, yeah.
It's similar to sales tax,
Right.
but it's applied at each stage of production rather than just at the final sale.
VAT. I've heard of it, but honestly, I don't really get how it works.
Okay. Think of it this way. Imagine a loaf of bread.
Okay.
The farmer who grows the wheat.
Yeah.
They pay VAT on the sale of their wheat. Then the miller, who grinds the wheat into flour, pays VAT on the value they added to that wheat, and so on, all the way to the baker who sells you the final loaf.
Oh, so it's like a chain reaction of taxation?
Yeah, you could say that.
What else is there besides VAT?
You also have excise duties,
Oh, really?
which are taxes on specific goods.
Okay.
Often things like alcohol, tobacco, or gasoline. And then there are tariffs,
Okay.
which are taxes on imported goods.
Tariffs, yeah. Those have been in the news a lot lately, with all the talk of trade wars and protectionist policies.
Yes. Tariffs have a long and sometimes controversial history.
Yeah.
They can be used to protect domestic industries, but they can also lead to higher prices for consumers and retaliation from other countries.
So it's a complex balancing act. Government's trying to find the right mix of taxes to get the revenue they need, while also considering all these economic and political implications. It's like a giant puzzle, isn't it?
It really is. And one of the key pieces of that puzzle is understanding who actually bears the burden of these different taxes.
You mean even if I'm not the one directly paying the tax, I might still end up feeling the effects.
Precisely. That's where the concept of tax incidence comes in. It's about figuring out who ultimately pays the price, even if they aren't the ones, writing the check to the government.
Okay, give me an example. How could this play out in real life?
Let's say there's a tax on businesses, like a corporate income tax. Now, businesses might absorb some of that cost, but they might also pass it on to consumers in the form of higher prices for their products or services. So even if you, as an individual, aren't paying that corporate income tax directly, you might end up paying for it indirectly when you buy, groceries, clothes, anything else.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Suddenly, those price tags are looking a little different.
It's all about understanding those ripple effects. They can influence prices, wages, investment decisions, a whole host of economic behaviors. It's a complex web of interconnectedness.
I'm starting to see why economists have job security. It's a lot to unpack.
It certainly is, but it's essential to grasp these concepts if we want to have, informed discussions about how taxes impact our lives.
All right, so we've established that taxes are complex. They're everywhere.
They are.
And their effects can be far-reaching.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get too deep into that, let's tackle the big question. Why are taxes considered so essential in the first place?
Yes. The $1 million question, or rather the $1 trillion question.
Right.
At the heart of it, taxes are the lifeblood of any functioning society.
Okay. But I can already hear some people out there saying, but why can't the private sector handle some of these things?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need the government involved?
It's a valid point, and there are certainly ongoing debates about the optimal balance between public and private provision of services. However, certain functions are widely considered to be within the realm of government responsibility. Things like national defense, law enforcement, the judicial system.
Right. Those things are kind of hard to outsource to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
But beyond just funding those core functions, what other benefits do taxes bring to the table?
One of the key arguments for taxation is its role in reducing economic inequality.
Okay.
Progressive tax systems, where higher earners pay a larger proportion of their income in taxes, can help redistribute wealth and create a more equitable society.
So it's about using taxes as a tool to level the playing field to some extent.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that everyone has access to essential opportunities and that the burden of funding public services is shared fairly. Of course, there are different philosophical perspectives on how far that redistribution should go, but the underlying principle is one of social solidarity,
right? Collective
responsibility.
This brings to mind those who view taxes as government overreach, even theft. How do we address those concerns?
It's important to acknowledge those concerns and engage in thoughtful dialogue about the balance between individual liberty and the needs of the collective. Philosophical objections to taxation often stem from the idea that individuals have an inherent right to their property and that any compulsory taking by the government violates that right.
So it's a fundamental tension between personal freedom and the social contract, I guess, we enter into as members of a society.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And there's a spectrum of viewpoints within that debate, from those who advocate for minimal taxation to those who see a more active role for government in using taxes to address societal issues.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground from ancient history to modern economic theory. We even touched on philosophy a bit.
We did.
It's clear that this topic is it's incredibly multifaceted.
It truly is, and we've only just begun to scratch the surface.
All right. Well, I'm definitely hooked. You've piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
What else can you reveal about this intricate world of taxes?
Welcome back to our deep dive into taxes. I feel like we've covered a lot.
We have.
The history, the different types we see today, and the main arguments for why they're considered so essential. But let's face it, no conversation about taxes is complete without addressing the elephant in the room.
The downsides.
Yeah, the downsides.
Right.
So what are we talking about here? What are the not so fun aspects of this essential system? Well, one major concern is the cost of compliance.
Oh, yeah.
Think about all the time, energy, and resources that individuals and businesses have to invest in navigating, the complexities of tax codes. From record keeping to form filling to hiring accountants, it all adds up.
Yeah, tax season can feel like a collective national headache.
And those headaches, well, they translate into real costs.
Right.
Not just frustration, but actual money spent to ensure compliance.
So even before paying like a single dollar in taxes, you might already be spending money just to figure out what you owe. That doesn't seem very efficient.
It's a valid criticism, and simplifying tax codes is often proposed as a solution. But, well, that's a whole other debate.
We'll save that for another deep dive.
Yeah.
But beyond compliance costs, what other negative impacts are we looking at?
Well, taxes can sometimes distort economic incentives,
Okay.
leading to what economists call deadweight loss.
Okay, deadweight loss. That sounds a bit ominous. Can you break that down for us?
Imagine a situation where a high tax is placed on a particular product, let's say gasoline.
Okay.
Now that tax, it might be well-intentioned, aimed at reducing pollution or encouraging fuel efficiency. However, it could also lead consumers to make different choices.
Okay.
Perhaps choosing a less fuel-efficient car or driving less overall.
Mm-hmm.
These choices, driven by the tax, might result in an overall reduction in economic activity, a net loss for society, hence the term deadweight loss.
So it's like the tax creates unintended consequences that ripple through the economy.
Exactly, and it highlights that constant balancing act that policymakers face, trying to raise revenue while minimizing those distortions and those negative impacts.
It seems like finding that sweet spot is more art than science.
You could say that. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about the challenges of taxation in developing countries.
Okay.
They often face unique hurdles in establishing efficient and fair tax systems.
Right. We've mainly focused on developed economies so far. What are some of the key issues in developing countries?
One major obstacle is the presence of large informal sectors where economic activity goes unrecorded and therefore untaxed.
Okay.
Think about street vendors, small-scale farmers,
Yeah.
or any kind of work that operates outside the formal economy.
So it's about bringing these informal activities into the fold of the formal economy
Precisely.
and the tax system.
It's a huge challenge, but also a massive opportunity.
Yeah.
If you can effectively tax the informal sector, you suddenly have like a much larger revenue base to work with.
And that revenue can be invested in infrastructure, education, healthcare,
Exactly.
all the things that contribute to economic development.
However, developing countries often face other obstacles as well.
Right.
Like weak institutions, lack of administrative capacity, and even corruption, all of which can undermine tax collection efforts.
So it's not just about designing the right policies, it's also about building the infrastructure and the trust necessary to actually implement those policies.
Well, absolutely. It's a multifaceted challenge
Yeah.
that requires a holistic approach.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've seen how taxes have evolved over millennia, explored the complexities of modern tax systems, and grappled with both the benefits and the drawbacks. Oh, I have to say, my perspective on taxes has definitely shifted.
I'm glad to hear that. It's a topic that often evokes strong emotions, but I think it's crucial to approach it with curiosity and a willingness to understand the nuances.
Now, I can't let you go without circling back to that question we posed at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Could we ever have a civilization without taxes?
It's a fascinating thought experiment. While alternative models have been proposed, the historical record suggests that taxation in some form is a remarkably persistent feature of human societies.
It seems that from the pyramids of ancient Egypt to the digital age, the need to pool resources for collective benefit has always been there.
And perhaps that's the key takeaway from our deep dive today. Taxes, despite their complexities and their imperfections, are ultimately a reflection of our interconnectedness, our shared responsibility for creating the kind of world we want to live in.
So the next time you find yourself, grumbling about paying taxes, try to remember that it's not just about funding roads and schools. It's about contributing to the very fabric of society. And who knows, maybe by understanding the history and the nuances, we can all we can all work together to build a tax system that's more fair, more efficient, and maybe even a little less painful.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of taxes. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
And thank you to our expert for sharing your insights and helping us navigate this complex and often misunderstood topic. We hope you found this deep dive informative and thought-provoking. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations into the legacies that shape our world. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.